Hi everyone, welcome to Figma to Webflow course. Today we will design this beautiful landing page in Figma and build it in Webflow to make it fully functional and responsive so it will work on all breakpoints. For example, desktop, tablet and mobile, landscape and portrait. And then we will make it interactive and add basic transition, for example button hover effect and hero section animation on loading. I have received a lot of requests about landing page design, and especially the beginner ones who have asked many questions about some advanced features which they don't understand. So I decided to create a very beginner course for the beginners, especially to understand and know how to create a landing page. So let's start the course. First, if you want to follow along with me, you can download a starter file from the community. The link is in the description below. You can click on the link and download the file from the community, and it's a good practice to also follow along as I am creating the landing page. Okay, so inside the starter file, here is the pages. So if you can click, so there is two pages, assets and design. Inside the assets, I have already placed the logo, type and color palette, product shot, logos and illustration which I have downloaded from prefix, and these assets are already included in the asset page. Okay, so let's start the design. First thing, let's click on the design page and let's select the frame tool. First of all, we need to create a main artboard, so select the frame tool, and on the right side here is the preset panel, which is a great, and I am a great fan of this panel. So let's select the desktop one. We will create 1440 by 1024. So let's click, and first thing, let's rename this. So let's call it tasker landing page. Okay, so we have created our artboard. Now the next important thing is to create layout grid. So in the layout grid section, click on the plus, and inside the grid select the column, and for the count let's make it 12 column, and for the color let's create something interesting color, like which is not hard to eyes, so I think blue is good. And for the opacity, let's make it 4, maybe 8, so that you guys can see. And inside the type, select the center option, and for the width let's make it 80, and for the gutter 20 is fine. Voila, we have created our first layout grid system. So next, let's press shift to zoom to selection. Now let's click on the asset page again, and let's select the logo, press command C, control C, and now click on the design page and command V to paste it. Okay, so we have placed our logo. Now select again, go to asset page, and let's select color palette and copy. Now click the design page and paste here. Okay, now press shift G to hide the grid, and let's duplicate this. By the way, for the duplicate, press option and shift to duplicate one item. Now select this rectangle and make it white. Let's bring it here. Okay, let's make the pasteboard area slightly darker, something like this. Now select the first color and click on these 4 circles inside the fill, and click on the plus to add. Let's make it light. Again, click on the 4 circle, click on plus, make it dark. Now let's again duplicate this. We need to create gradient from these 2 colors. So select and go to fill, select gradient, and first pink is fine, but let's make it slightly angular. So slightly angle, something like this. Select the second color and select the eyedropper and select the blue color. Okay, so we have created our gradient. Now select again. So we have created light, dark and gradient. Okay, let's turn on our grid, shift G, and now let's create our nav item. So let's click, and the first item will be features, the second item will be request a demo, and the third item will be try for free. Select all these nav item, and on the right side inside the text select the enter fonts, and for the type let's make it medium. For the size let's use maybe 16. Yeah, 16 is fine. For the color let's make it black. Okay, so now select try for free, and we are going to create our first auto layout. So if you don't know how to create auto layout, you can click right click and add auto layout. Otherwise, for the shortcut I am using shift A. So voila, we have created our first auto layout. Now the first thing, let's add fill color. So let's select the gradient, and now double click, select the type and make it white. So the next thing, again select the text and let's make it 14. Let's make it bold, and here is in the more option, the three circle, here is the case, and we can click on the uppercase to make it uppercase. Okay, and for the gap letter spacing let's use 8. Okay, our button is looking pretty good. Now let's round the corner to make it 8. And for the left and right fading let's use 32, and for the top and bottom let's use 16. Let's bring this closer and let's align it. Okay, so now the next thing is we need to create drop shadow for the button. So first let's clip the content. Clip the content option is checked in. Now let's go to effects, click on plus. Let's use inside the y value, let's use 16, and in the blur let's type 32, and in the spread let's use minus 16. So it's more looking like a 3D flowing button. So let's use this blue color and 100%. I think let's turn off the grid so we can see. Let's slightly dim the color. So let's make it 64 opacity. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, now select these three options and convert it to auto layout. Okay, so for the spacing, let's inside like the spacing and the gap inside the auto layout, let's make it 40. Let's turn on grid and align it with the grid. Now let's select the logo and again convert it to auto layout, shift A. So now this is one object. Now let's center line, so it's fully centered to this element, and now select the auto layout. Let's make it 40 from the top, something like this. So we have created our navigation bar, which is great. Okay, so the next thing, let's create our hero section. So for this we need to add a height, so let's make it 2000 for now. Okay, the next thing, let's select the type tool, press T, and let's type. For the size let's use 56, and let's make it black, center line, and for the color let's use this dark center line. Let's use 120 from the top. If you want to know how to I align this with 120 value, just press option key and mouse over the elements, so it shows the value of 120. If you want to align it with the top, press option key and hover on this area, so it shows the 40. Again, let's create a text frame. Let's paste some text here. and let's center line, remove style, the uppercase style. Let's use auto height align option instead of fixed size, and for the type let's use 18, maybe let's make it 20, and for the size let's use regular. Color we have already updated dark, and regular is option is fine. So this is our paragraph. Now let's align it, let's make it 40. Now again let's select this button with the option key and duplicate this, type join the wait list for early access. We need to make it slightly bigger, so let's try maybe 18. And for the top and bottom spacing let's use 32, and let's for the left and right let's use 64, and this will be like 80 from the paragraph text. So 120 from the top and 40 inside and 80 from the button side. Okay, now let's disable the grid, so shift G, and the drop shadow let's increase it, so let's use 32. For the blur let's use 64, something like this. Let's use 24, minus 24. So this is our second button, primary button. And for the drop shadow color let's use this reddish color, maybe. Let's see, I think instead of this color let's make it the pink color, yeah, like this. Okay, so it's more prominent. Okay, so the next thing now is to place the product shot here. So for this let's increase the height of the page, so let's make it 9000, which is pretty big. And now let's click on the asset page and select product shot, copy, and let's paste it here. Now turn on grid and place it something here, align it with our grid system. So for this let's select the product shot and press the K key on the keyboard, and let's increase the width, something like this. Okay, now let's add the spacing of 120. This is our product shot. Now let's click on the product shot and go to effects, add drop shadow. Let's make it 0. For the blur let's use something like this, maybe 80. And for the color let's select this pink, or maybe this red from the logo. Yeah, I think red looking good. Let's make it 60%, or maybe 24, slightly. Yeah, it's looking fine. This is our product shot. So the next is the logo section. So for this let's turn on the grid with the shift G. Now select the type tool and let's type trusted by. Okay, now let's remove the spacing line, letter spacing, which make it 0. Remove the uppercase and let's make it dark. And for the size let's use 40, center line and center line. From the top let's use 120. Okay, now let's go to the asset folder and let's select logos, copy, click on the design page, let's paste it here. So these are our logos. Now let's bring closer, center line, and let's align the spacing. or maybe we can convert it to auto layout, shift A, and let's use it 120 for the gap. From this spacing, let's use 40. Yeah, something like this. Okay, one thing, let's select the logo. So this is svg, we can change the color. So let's make it slightly darker, something like this. Let's turn off grid, and it's looking good. So these are our logos. Now again, let's duplicate this, call this features, and again go to asset page and select these illustration, copy. Let's turn on grid, and maybe we can make it 4 column wide. Also, by the way, I am using K for the scale tool, so something like this. Maybe I think it's slightly big, so let's leave it with the 3 column align, something like this. Yeah, it's looking good. Now let's turn off grid. Let's duplicate this text, and let's make it 24 for the h3, and let's type task management. First one is task management, and for the subtext, let's make it regular. Let's make it 16 for the paragraph size. Let's turn on grid, and auto align height, turn on this option. I have already the text, so let's copy and paste the text inside. For the line height, let's make it 24, so the 16 is the size, so 24 will be the line height. Okay, now let's duplicate this, and the second one will be, let's the first center line, select the title center line and the artwork center line. Okay, now let's align these with the center line, and on the right side and on the left side. Okay, now let's make this one to the 3 line, and 3 line is fine, 3 line. Okay, now let's check the spacing. So let's use, so for the spacing let's use 24, and from the illustration let's use 40. Select the illustration and align it. Now let's select, and I think we need to add some space, so let's use 80, double of the 40, so 80. Yeah, I think it's looking good. Let's add the spacing to the logo, so 80, which is good. Yeah, it's looking good. Now the next section will be request a demo, so let's create that section. Let's duplicate this 120, and let's type. Now let's duplicate, and let's make it 40, turn on grid, and something like this. Okay, so I have used the chat gpt and create this random text, and I think it will look fine. So let's make it 2 line text, and it's basically chat gpt generated text. So 16 and line height 24, which is looking good, and 40 from the top. So this is our page so far. Now let's create the form section. So for the form, and let's turn on grid, and let's divide our grid 4 by 4. So select the frame, and let's create frame I think let's use 4. For the stroke, let's add stroke dark, and for the roundness, let's make it 8, something like this. For the line height, let's use, we can try 64. Select the text tool and let's type name, left align, and for the color let's use this, and for the size I think let's use 14, and bold I think let's use 16. Nowadays typography is huge, so we need to use huge font size, something like this. Okay, now convert it to auto layout, shift A, and for the size, yeah, 16 is fine. So from the top let's use 80. I make mistake, let's align it something like this. Select auto layout and make it hug content. Let's duplicate this with the option and again duplicate it. So these three we will use for the CTA. So the second one is, let's select the button. I think let's use this button. Let's make it component, and let's duplicate this with the command D, control D, and select the master component, bring outside the artboard. So let's rename it to CTA. So this is now the child of the main component. Now let's paste here and align it. Let's use something like this. Let's call it submit. Okay, so this is our CTA and form. Let's select all these and convert it to auto layout and center line. So the last is the footer. So for the footer, let's go to the asset page and again select the logo, copy, and let's paste it here, center line. Let's use 120, something like this, and select the type tool and let's type YouTube. Let's make it dark, use it 16, remove the line letter spacing, make it 0. Let's make it semi bold, or maybe let's see, let's convert it to auto layout and make it 40. Let's, the second one will be center line, and the last thing is the copyright. Let's paste copyright and 2024 tasker full stop all right reserved. Let's make it regular and center line. 16 is fine, 40 is fine. So this is our landing page so far. Yeah, the grid and everything is fine. Let's play this and let's see. So the preview is fine. Yeah, everything is looking good. Spacing is fine. It's looking good. So this is our Figma part, and now it's time to convert this to fully functional inside Webflow. So stay tuned for the Webflow part and we will continue inside a Webflow. Okay, so now I'm inside Webflow and let's create our first blank site and let's type tasker and let's create our site. It's loading. Okay, so now we are inside Webflow and let's build our landing page. Okay, now so the first we need to install the font, so let's click on the Webflow logo and go to the site setting and click on fonts. As we can see, we have already used enter font inside Figma, so let's download enter font here in Webflow. So enter, we have used regular and medium. I think we also used semi bold, bold. I think let's upload all these weights. So add font, and we have uploaded our font. Now let's go to the designer. Okay, so the next thing we need to create our style, like for example the colors and font we have already uploaded. So let's create our color palette. Click on the variable and click on the new variable, select color. First is the white color, so let's type light. Click on the new variable and color. This time we will use dark, pink and blue. For the dark we will use color code of 1D192B. So this is our dark color. Let's copy the pink color from the Figma file and let's paste it here. Select the blue, copy and paste here. So these are our colors, and let's close. Okay, now it's time to assign base font to the body tag. So let's click on the navigator and select body tag, and now inside this panel select body all pages, and in the typography section select a font. Let's search for the enter. We have already downloaded. Let's click the enter, and for the weight normal is fine. We will use 1 rem equal to 16, so 1 rem. Okay, and for the line height let's use 1.5 dash, and for the color let's use the dark color. So we have assigned our base font to the body tag. Okay, so now it's time to create our style guide. Before building our landing page inside Webflow, it's best practice to create first style guide. So let's start creating our style guide. So for this we need to click on the add element, and in this section here is all our HTML elements are located, but sometime I will use the shortcut. So for example, if I press Command E, basically if I type section, so this is the same thing which we need to go to the add elements and click on the section. So normally I will use like section, then we will add container. First thing in our landing page is h1 heading 1, so let's add h1, and the second is h2. We have used h2, and the third one is h3. Also the paragraph and button we have used two button, one is small and one is large. So first we will create a small button, and then we will duplicate the class and create large button. So okay, so let's first start design our h1. So select h1 heading. Inside the style selector select all h1 headings, and the first thing we need is to change the weight. So the weight in our style is black, so we will use black. And for the size we have used 56, so 56 divided by 16, which is 3.5 rem, and 1.5 150% line height is okay. Let's center line and capitalize. For the letter spacing let's use 2. So this is our h1. Now let's work on h2. So let's select h2 and let's click on the style selector and select all h2 headings. Okay, next we need the same properties like bold and center line. The size is 40, so 40 divided by 16, 2.5 rem, and we don't need to capitalize this, so it's okay. And the color is also fine, the dark. So we have created our h2. Now let's work on h3. So click on the style selector and all heading h3, and let's first define the size. Also change the weight to bold, and let's type 24 divided by 16, so it's 1.5 rem. And let's center line, so this is our h3. Now let's select paragraph and select all paragraph. Center line 1 rem is fine, and regular is also fine. I think we don't need anything else, so paragraph is done. Now let's select the button, and for the button let's define our custom class. So button dash small rsm. Okay, and the next thing is to define the top and bottom fading and left and right. So first click on the top, and let's type 16. Press option key and alt key and return. So it's basically define both top and bottom. Now let's click on the right side and let's type 32. Press option key and enter, so it is 32 from the left and right. Okay, now let's go okay, first let's define type size. So 16, I think 16 is fine, but let's capitalize and make it bold. Maybe let's use medium. And I think the button text is large, so let's see, 14 divided by 16, so it is 0.875 rem. And center line and capitalize. For the letter spacing, let's slightly increase, so 1 is fine. And also let's add gradient to the button. So click on this plus and select the gradient. Select the first color. We have already created our variable color, so select the pink, and now let's select the blue. So this is our beautiful looking gradient. Now let's make it slightly angular, so 135 degrees fine. And let's define the corner radius, so let's make it 8. And let's add box shadow. First we need to select the color. Instead of variables we will select custom, because we need to drop the opacity maybe 24. And let's increase the y value, something like this. Let's increase the blur, and for the size let's use -8. So I think it's looking good. So this is our button small. Now let's duplicate this, and also let's duplicate the class. Let's call this button large. So for the large we have only increased the size, so let's use maybe 1 rem. 16 is fine, so 16, and 1 is good. And let's increase the top and bottom, so 32 top and bottom. Let's use 64 left and right, so it's basically double of 32, so 64. So this is our button large, this is our button small, paragraph and headings. So now our style guide is completed, the basic style guide. We have done everything. Now let's click on the navigator and select this section, and let's rename this section dash style guide, and let's disable this mean height. So now we will be building our landing page. Okay, so now it's time to bring our assets which we exported last time from Figma. Let's bring it to the Webflow. So I have already opened in my second screen, so let's grab and all the assets to the Webflow. So it's added all our logos and illustrations which we will be needed. So everything is now uploaded to the Webflow, and it's time to building our site. Okay, so now it's time to create our navigation bar. So let's press Command E on the keyboard, type nav. So Figma by default created this, so let's use pre-made nav bar. So click, and this is our nav bar. Now click on the asset and select the logo and place it inside the brand. Now let's rename this, and let's call this features. request a demo and try for free. Okay, now let's select the nav link, and for the top and bottom spacing let's use 16 and press the option key, return. Now let's work on the typography, so let's make it medium, dark is fine. And for the size I think 16 is slightly larger, so 14 divided by 16, 16, so something like this, 0.875. okay, I think everything is perfect. And also nav link class is created, so let's rename this and let's type nav dash link. Now let's assign the same class to the request demo and let's type nav link. And for this we need to assign the button class, so we have created button small, so let's select button small, all the styles assigned to this, which is cool. And now let's select brand and let's add some margin from the top, so let's try 1 2 3 4. I think 4 looking good, so let's leave it 4. And let's select the main element navbar, and from the top let's use 24, so slightly spacing from the top. Select the main navbar, and for the background color let's use light. Let's preview it. So this is our navigation bar, which is looking good. Okay, so now it's time to create our hero section. So for the hero section let's first add section, so command E, and let's type section, then add a container inside the section. So the section is selected, now let's type container, and now inside container let's add h1, paragraph and button. Later we will add image, but for now these three items is fine. So first let's select the section and let's name it section, then select container and let's call this container. Okay, so container is selected. Let's inside the display block select plex and make it vertical. Instead of stretch we will use both vertical and horizontal center. Okay, now let's copy the original text from the Figma file and paste inside the title and paragraph text, copy paste, and the button text. Okay, now select the button, and we have already created our style for the button large, so let's apply this. We will select the container, so let's add a combo class. So let's call it margin top and bottom 80. So this is a combo class. We will add margin top and bottom 80 pixel. So press option and enter, so both top and bottom 80. Okay, now select the title and add a combo class of margin bottom 40. So let's add 40 pixel bottom. Select paragraph text and let's create a class for margin bottom and let's add 80. So this is only for the bottom 80. Okay, so we have created our combo classes like margin bottom and margin top and bottom. Okay, and now it's time to bring our image, so let's drag our product shot here inside the container, and now select the product shot and let's first rename this product shot. First thing, we need to round the corner, so make it 12 or maybe 8, but let's see. And next we need to add box shadow, so let's add box shadow. First we need to assign color, so the pink is fine. Let's add blur, so for the blur press the option key and increase it to maybe let's use 100, and for the size let's decrease it to 50. So let's preview this, and it's looking perfect. So this is our navigation bar and hero section is done. Now let's work on the logo section. Let's create, for this we need again a section, so let's Command E and let's type section. Let's select body, let's press section. Now let's add a container, and inside container let's add a div block, and inside the div block let's drag all the logos. So the first one is this logo, the second one is, so next we need to select div block and let's name this logos. And next we need to use the grid, so let's convert it to grid. Let's increase the column to 4 and row 0, and for the alignment let's use center for both vertical and horizontal. Now let's click on the navigator and select container, press Command E and let's add H2, bring it to the inside container, and let's type the text trusted by. Next we need to add margin bottom 40. Okay, next we have the feature section, so let's create the feature section. So for this we need to select body and Command E, let's type section, let's create let's add container. So container, inside container let's add div block and let's convert this to grid, and let's make it 3 column, so we have 3 feature section and 1 row. Okay, so next we need to insert image, so let's select image. Next we need H3 because we used H1 H2 and now it's time to create H3, so let's add H3, and then we need to add paragraph. Okay, as we can see these are now in separate columns, so we need to add another div block and press Command key and let's drag image, heading and paragraph. Okay, so now this is one block, so let's select this and let's name this card, and this one will be feature image. Okay, so now double click and select feature one, this one, and the text will be task management. Copy the subtext. Okay, so this is H3 and this is the paragraph text. Okay, now select card and we need to center align, so let's try. For the paragraph let's use flex box, so let's create flex box vertical and center align, so we align our image, text and everything to the center. Okay, now let's see the spacing. So first we need to select the grid, so let's check the grid spacing. Okay, so let's type 20, or grid spacing is 20. Then for the task management text, so this text, let's call this H3, something like this. So H3, and the bottom fading is 24, something like this. Now let's duplicate this 3 times and let's change the image. So let's, the second image, the text is, now select the section and let's use. Okay, so for the spacing let's add 80 to the top and bottom, so each section will be 80 top and bottom, which is good. So now let's preview this, it's looking perfect. Okay, so now it's time to create our form section. So for the form, let's create section, command E, and let's enter container, and inside container let's add h2 and let's add paragraph, and let's add form block. Okay, and now let's, okay, first let's add actual content. So copy text, and now let's duplicate this, command D, and duplicate text, command D. Okay, now let's bring this back. Okay, and let's type company, and for this input let's make it plain, and let's type company and not required. Okay, so this is our form block and this is our text. Okay, so now we need to make it center, like this need to be in second line. So for this we need to select both, or just press insert a div block. So let's select div block and let's put these two items inside div block. Okay, and let's name this text wrapper. Okay, now let's make this 60%. Okay, and now let's select input, and again let's place it inside div block. So let's grab this, and let's, yeah, this is a div block. So let's name this input wrapper. Okay, and now let's add another div block, and let's grab this, let's check it. So div block input, and let's type input wrapper. Okay, and now let's add another div block, and let's grab these two items, let's confirm it inside div block, and let's rename this to input wrapper. And now select form block, and okay, and now let's make it flex box. Let's close this. For the button, let's create button small, let's align it to the bottom. Now let's select the text input field. So let's select this input, let's call this input, let's remove bottom space, let's name this input, let's name this input. Now let's select the flex box and make it give 20, and select input wrapper, make it grow if possible. Let's select the input and make it round about 8 point, and let's apply dark border, and let's apply height 44 px. Now let's select this and call this label, or just select this all labels, and instead of bold let's use medium, and 16 is big, so let's use 14 divided by 16, something like this. Now let's select this and let's apply margin. So I think 40 is good. Now select content wrapper and let's try center line. So it's not, let's remove this class and let's clean our style. Okay, so now select H2 heading and let's select M, and let's apply margin bottom 40, decrease the size so button small, and add combo class for the form dash CTA. It's looking perfect. Okay, so this is our landing page so far. So let's review. And before creating our footer, so it's a good practice to review and clean up the file. So I think I didn't assign some classes to this, like for example this is need to assign a containers class. So and also we did a mistake, like we assign flexbox to the main container. So let's first assign the container class to this section, so you can see the difference. It's already flexbox, so it's not a good practice. Let's remove the flexbox from the container. So as we can see, the layout is now left align, and we will assign another class for the center. So let's review now. Okay, and I think we don't need margin bottom 80. Let's remove this because we have already assigned section and 80 margin to the top and bottom, so we don't need another margin. So container, and we didn't assign container, so let's apply container class. And also for this section let's assign container, and here is also we need container. First we need to select the class, and inside the class let's select container, and now click container. So now we assign container to the every section. And now let's first select one container. Let's first increase the width, so as we need to see the difference. So for example, if we type 1100 pixel, so I have reduced the screen size for the video recording. So let's remove, and it's working good. So let's first correct hero section, select the container, and now let's create. Okay, first let's clean up all the classes. So okay, now select container, and here we will need to add another class which is centered. And now apply the flex box to this section, center both vertical and horizontal. The hero section is looking good. Now let's work on the footer. So select section, and let's add a section. And now let's create container, and inside container we will need logo. So first let's grab the logo, then we will need a div block. So let's add a div block, and inside div block let's add text link. Okay, so we need 6 links, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, and now let's first rename this. So the first one is YouTube, the second one is linked, remove Twitter, Facebook, and let's use these three. Now inside select a container, so let's select the section, let's apply section. And now let's select container. I think we need to go to the navigator and select container, and now let's apply container class. So now inside container let's press command E, and let's add text block, and let's copy all the text and paste it here. Okay, now select container, and let's apply the center combo class. And now let's select the link, so let's apply all link, and we don't need text decoration. And for the color let's use this dark. And now let's select the div block, and let's name it social, and let's apply flexbox. Vertical is fine, but let's add gap of 20. Again, let's select and apply some spacing. So for the logo, let's type logo and margin bottom 40. Select social and apply margin bottom 40. Let's this one is copyright text, and let's assign margin bottom 40. Now let's preview this. Okay, so this is our layout so far, which is looking good. We didn't increase the width of the container because I have reduced the screen size for the recording, so we will leave it this small width. Okay, so now it's time to make our website responsive. So first let's review the desktop view, and it's looking pretty good. Now let's switch to the tablet. So slightly adjustment needed, like the typography is slightly bigger, so let's decrease h2 size and also the h3, and some spacing issue also. This title need to be smaller and some fading. So this is the tablet view. Now let's click on the mobile landscape, and here is some issue about padding. Also for the typography, I think it's slightly bigger, so let's decrease the size and also some spacing. So in the mobile portrait, typography issue, padding and some spacing. Also this spacing and this is need to be adjusted. So let's start, and now let's click on the tablet and inside tablet. So first let's select container and select this container, and let's apply a margin of 20, and everything is margin 20. I think let's increase slightly, so instead of 20 let's try 40 with the option key pressed. So now it's slightly better. Okay, so now let's work on the spacing. So let's check first this section. So 8 is slightly bigger, so let's decrease it to maybe 40, and I think 40 is looking good. Now let's check this size. So margin bottom 40. Okay, so let's remove this class. I think we have margin bottom. Okay, we don't have margin bottom 20, so let's create one. So let's duplicate this, and now let's type 20, and instead of 40 let's type 20. So margin bottom 20. Okay, now this is 80. So first let's adjust the title, and then we will work on the spacing. Okay, so let's remove this class, select all h1. So we are now inside the tablet view, and now we are slightly decreasing the size. So let's try 44 divided by 16, so 2.75. Let's decrease it slightly to one line. Maybe 2.2 is looking good, so let's leave it. Now let's apply margin bottom, and 40 is huge, so let's try margin bottom and 20. Okay, it's looking good. For the paragraph, let's select all paragraph, and let's remove this and select all paragraph. And for the paragraph size is okay, and for the maximum width let's try 90%. So 90% is looking good. Now let's try margin bottom and 40. So it's looking good, and the button is also okay. We need this button. Maybe we can decrease the height slightly, so 24 in tablet. So it's looking pretty good. Okay, now let's select h2. So let's remove this, select all h2, and in the tablet view let's reduce the size to maybe 2. And now let's apply margin bottom, and let's try 40. 40 is good. Now let's select this, and we didn't assign the class, so let's assign the class for this too. Let's click on the desktop and select first logo, and this is the partner logos, and apply this class to the all logos. So now let's click on the tablet and select partner logo, and for the side, instead of 100% let's use 70%, and also the section margin is 40, and which is good. So let's preview this section. Okay, now let's work on this section. So now click on the features. First let's adjust the title. So for the title, maybe let's try 1.2. This is all paragraph and we need to adjust it slightly. So let's try another class for paragraph, and let's slightly decrease the size to maybe 1.5. Let's try. Let's apply this same class paragraph, and let's try paragraph. Okay, and now let's check this margin 24. So let's try 20 or maybe 10. Let's try 20. For the gap, let's reduce it 10. Looking good. Featured image 100%. So let's reduce and let's preview it. So now it's looking perfect. Apply the same paragraph, new class to this section. Margin 40. Let's remove this class and type margin 20. Inside the tablet, let's select form div, and instead of horizontal let's try vertical. Let's see, it's looking good. And for the button small, let's make it, or maybe let's try center. Again, preview this container. Let's click on it and let's select the form. For inside padding, let's select this and let's type 40. I think it's looking good. So text wrapper 40. So let's try 20. It's looking good. Okay, so I think we need slightly adjust size of h2. So let's adjust this and let's select this slightly. I think 1.6 looking good. So let's preview this. It's looking good. And now let's slightly decrease the size of the social links and also the footer copyright text. So let's select social link 1 rem, so 14 divided by 16. Copy bottom margins. Let's delete this class and select copyright text, and let's try divide by 16. This is looking good. And now let's try margin bottom 40. I think we need to add some spacing. So let's select input wrapper, and for the bottom margin let's try 10. I think I have applied both top and bottom. So let's click on the navigator and input wrapper. Okay, and let's press option key and remove this. So now let's preview this. I think it's clickable, and let's slightly decrease the space to maybe 4. And now let's preview this. It's looking perfect. Okay, now let's work on the hamburger menu. So let's select this, and it's okay, it will be appear inside tablet. If we want, we can only show in mobile landscape. In the tablet we need a real navigation bar, so it's up to you. We can hide in the tablet view, and let's slightly stylize. Select this and try blue, and for the background let's try this and make it slightly something like this. Okay, and now let's click on the settings and let's try show. So for hover, let's select this and make it light, and for the bottom let's select the enabling and center line. Let's click on this if it is open, so let's try this. Okay, so now click on the settings and select this, make it height. So now let's preview this. So once we click, it will appear. Here is our button. Now let's click again, and this is our tablet so far. Okay, so now let's click on the mobile landscape, and for the container left and right padding, let's try 20. So let's try 20, and it's looking perfect. In mobile landscape, make this button fully width of the mainframe. Okay, so now let's select this feature and let's select from the navigator this div, and let's make it one column. Let's press done. Now let's preview this. Some adjustment needed, but I think overall it's looking perfect. So let's select the text. I think it's looking perfect, but we need some spacing, so let's try 20 to the bottom. Reduce the size of this text. Let's try hero and slightly reduce, and now let's apply margin bottom, maybe 40. Yeah, 40 is looking good, and preview this. This is not aligned, so let's see what's happened. 60%. Okay, make it 100%. Okay, so this is the same paragraph. Okay, so for the card row, let's 60%. Justify this to center. Let's try this card is also to the center. Okay, now let's preview this. So it's looking perfect. Let's reduce the spacing here. So let's select this. I think we have applied 40. Let's try 20 here. Margin bottom, so let's remove this and let's type margin bottom 20. So 20 is looking good, and margin bottom, so for this let's try margin bottom 20. Now let's preview this. Okay, now it's time to work on the mobile portrait. Let's click on the portrait and let's see what's improvement we need. To slightly decrease the size, and also the size of this text button is need to be adjusted. Image, and also we need to reduce the padding here, so let's do this. And for the logo this time, let's make it 2 column, and we will reduce the size of this text. I think this is looking perfect, and we will increase slightly the size of the illustration in this view, and also this text, and the form is looking good, but we will slightly reduce the spacing here. So first let's select this, and okay, so let's remove this and let's select all H1. For the size, let's try it. Okay, and now let's try margin bottom, and let's try 20. And for the hero paragraph, let's first remove this class. Let's adjust 14 divided by 16. Let's try this paragraph, and for the line height, And now let's apply margin bottom 40. And for this button, let's remove margin, and for the text and line height, I think we need to slightly reduce the width and height, so let's try 16 and press the option key and return. So 16 top and bottom, and let's try 32, press option key. And now let's increase the text size 8, and for the left and right, okay, and it's looking good. Now let's apply margin bottom, and let's make it 40, and let's work on the padding. So let's try 10, and let's try maybe here is also 10. Okay, the image radius, we need to increase it, it's 12, which is huge, so let's try 4. 4 is looking good. Let's work on this, but let's select container and maybe section. So for the section top and bottom, try 20 top and bottom. And now let's select h2, and let's remove this, select h2. And for the text, let's reduce the size slightly, maybe 1.2 rem. And for the margin bottom, let's try 20. 20 is looking good. And for the logos, use 2 column, and for the gap, let's unlock. So for the column, let's make it 0, and for the rows, let's try 30. Okay, now we have adjusted this, but for the margin bottom, let's remove this, and let's try margin bottom 20. And for the feature image 100%, let's increase the size. It maybe we still need margin bottom 40, so let's try this. And for this section, let's try 40. Okay, now let's remove this and apply same margin bottom 20. For the paragraph, let's try 90% here. Okay, so now let's see, let's try 10. Okay, so now let's preview. This is our desktop view. Let's fix the issue. And inside the tablet view, so it's looking perfect. Now let's click on the mobile landscape. Now the portrait, which is looking good. Let's see what's wrong with this. Okay, so this was basically we applied. Let's check it here. So if we select input wrapper and we applied margin bottom 80, so it's basically we implement the combo class. So combo class is also connected to this, so now it's looking perfect. We remove the combo class, and now it's looking good on all the preview. Okay, let's adjust this. So let's click on the social links, and for the size, let's decrease it 0.8, and for this 0.7 is looking good. Okay, so this is our responsive so far. This is desktop view, tablet view, and mobile landscape and mobile portrait. Now as you can see, all breakpoints is looking perfect. Okay, so we have already finished the responsive and now it's time to create some interactivity. So for this, let's create button hover. So let's select the main button and let's click on the hover state, and inside the hover state, let's first select box shadow and let's slightly increase it. Maybe let's try 60. For the blur, maybe let's try 80. Okay, and for the size, let's try 20 and slightly make it dark like 40%. So let's preview this. Now as we can see, like the button animation is okay, but it's slightly like static animation. So let's add some transition to make it smooth. So select the button and inside transition click on plus and let's select box shadow, make it 400 millisecond. So now it's slightly smooth, it's looking good. Now let's select the button small and let's also select hover and let's make opposite animation for this small button. So let's remove the y value to 0 and same for the blur, make it 0, and for the size let's make it also 0. So now once we hover, drop shadow is gone. And same thing, let's select button and add transition, select box shadow, make it 400. So now as we can see, this is the opposite animation and this is the spread out animation. And now let's check so it will work for the form button, because we just use the same class for this button, so we don't need to create another animation for this. It's looking cool. And now it's time to create hero section transition. So while the page is loading, this need to be paid in, so let's work on it. Okay, so after creating button state, and now it's time to create our hero section interactive mean while the page is loading, so it's slightly paid out and create some kind of transition. So let's create this. Okay, so first we need to select h1 and let's click on the interaction tab, and inside page trigger let's create first and page load. So start an animation. Okay, and let's create for this animation, let's call this hero section. Let's create and save. Okay, and now let's open this. Let's click on plus and create first move and click on the end and select move. So now click on the first move action and make it set as initial state, and inside vertical let's try 80 and click on the end, and for the duration let's type 1 second and let's make it in out quad and let's make it 0. Now let's try this. It's looking perfect, but we need to add another property. So let's click on the plus and let's select opacity. In the end, let's also add opacity. Okay, so select opacity on the first one and let's make it 0 and click on the end, make the duration 1 second and in out quad let's select this one and let's make it 100. Okay, so now I think it's looking perfect. Now it's time to create for the paragraph and then for the button for the hero image. So let's select paragraph and let's create move and let's click on the end and same move for the end state. Now select paragraph and set as initial state. Let's make it same 60 and okay, in this let's try 1 sec and let's select in out quad. Okay, and let's type 0. Same thing, we need to add opacity for the both state, so let's select opacity. So here we need to make it 0 and here we will make it 1 second, same in out quad and make 100%. Now let's preview this. It's looking perfect. Now it's time to create for the button. So let's select button and let's click move and same let's select opacity but let's first adjust the move. So set is initial state and let's type 80, and for the end state let's select move and select opacity. For the move, let's select duration 1 and select in out quad, let's make it 0, and for the opacity let's make it 1 sec, let's select in out quad, let's make it 100%. Okay, so let's check. Here is also we need to add opacity, so let's add opacity. Yeah, here is opacity initial state and make it 0. Now let's preview the animation. It's looking perfect. So while the page is loading, this animation will play. Okay, now let's select the product shot and apply the same thing, move, and here is the product shot. So set is initial state, let's try maybe 60, and let's create opacity, make it 0, and for the end state let's create move, and here let's try 1 second and in out quad, and for the y let's try 0, and let's create opacity to make it 100, and let's try 1, and instead of linear let's try in out quad. Okay, so now it's looking perfect. We can also apply the same animation technique on this, but this will be like scrolling into the section, so this animation will play, but I think for now it is enough, and this is it. So we have completed our landing page inside Webflow, which is fully interactive and also responsive.